Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe, and we're going to jump back into the story of Elisha out of 2 Kings chapter 7, where in this particular instance we just left off where Israel was having a very rough time, specifically against the king of Syria, who was trying to make war to them. So they besieged the city of Samaria? Let me bring that up real quick. Yes, besieged Samaria. And Samaria was then to the point now where a pile of doves' droppings were worth 5 pieces of silver. So 6 piles of doves' droppings could buy you a slave. That's how far flung out they were looking for food. And then it was so bad that some of the women had made an agreement to eat each other's children. It was that bad. And so now Elisha has promised that the Lord will make it the same the next day, that 2 measures of barley will be sold for a shekel, which is basically nothing compared to what it is at this point, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel. And one of the men who was helping the king said that couldn't possibly happen, even if God were to open windows in heaven. So Elisha said that it will happen, you will see it, but you won't get to taste any of the food. Picking back up at verse 3, it says, "And there were 4 leprous men at the entering in of the gate, and they said one to another, 'Why sit we here until we die?'" And we understand that during this time, anybody who had leprosy was forced to stay outside the city. Nobody wanted to be near them. They were afraid of them, afraid to catch leprosy and die. So what they're reasoning amongst themselves, why are we sitting here? All of these people are dying. Why don't, we're going to die either way. Why don't we do something about it? Verse 4, "If we say we will enter into the city, then the famine is in the city. We shall die there. And if we sit still here, we die also. Now therefore come and let us fall unto the host of the Syrians. If they save us alive, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die." It's not going to be that big of a deal. They were going to die anyway. "And they rose up in the twilight to go unto the camp of the Syrians. And when they were come to the uttermost part of the camp of Syria, behold, there was no man there. For the Lord had made the host of the Syrians to hear a noise of chariots and a noise of horses, even the noise of a great host. And they said one to another, Lo, the king of Israel hath hired against us the king of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. Wherefore they arose and fled in the twilight, and left their tents and their horses and their asses, even the camp as it was, and fled for their life." And so God had put the Syrians to flight with a strange noise that made them think that all the armies of the surrounding nations had come against them. Verse 8 says, "And when these lepers came to the uttermost part of the camp, they went into one tent, and did eat and drink, and carried thence silver and golden raiment, and went and hid it. And came again, and entered into another tent, and carried thence also, and went and hid it. And then they said one to another, Well, we do not well. This day is a day of good tidings, and we hold our peace. If we tarry till the morning light, some mischief will come upon us. Now therefore come, that we may go and tell the king's household." So they came and called unto the porter of the city, and they told them, saying, "We came to the camp of the Syrians, and behold, there was no man there, neither voice of man, but horses tied and asses tied, and the tents as they were. And he called the porters, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king arose in the night, and said unto his servants, I will now show you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we be hungry, therefore are they gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive, and get into the city. And one of his servants answered and said, Let some take, I pray thee, 5 of the horses that remain, which are left in the city. Behold, they are as all the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as all the multitude of the Israelites that are consumed. And let us send and see." Or in other words, they only had 5 horses left in the city. All the others had died or had been eaten. And these ones were just as bad of a shape as all the Israelites. Verse 14, "They took therefore 2 chariot horses, and the king sent after the host of the Syrians, saying, Go and see." Verse 15, and they went after them unto Jordan, and lo, all the way was full of garments and vessels, which the Syrians had cast away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and spoiled the tents of the Syrians, so a measure of fine flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the Lord, on whose hand he leaned, to have the charge of the gate. And the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said, who spake when the king came down to him. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and a measure of fine flour for a shekel, shall be tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. And that Lord answered the man of God, and said, Now behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be? And he said, Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes, but shalt not eat thereof. And so it fell out unto him, for the people trode upon him in the gate, and he died. Or in other words, the people were in such a big hurry to get the food that they trampled him to death under feet, as he was supposed to be watching the gate and guiding the people to the food that they were intended to purchase for only a shekel. And so, once again, looking at this, we see that God has made provisions for Israel. They had come to a point where they were so done with what was going on that they were ready to strike out against Elisha and blame him for the whole thing, but it was not Elisha's fault. And so Elisha told them that God had promised he would bring them deliverance, and that deliverance would come quickly, and it would come the very next day, and that God would provide mightily for them. Now, there was somebody who didn't believe, and that one who didn't believe, that Lord of the kings, he was, in his disbelief, he lost his opportunity for any kind of an inheritance among the people of Israel. And so he didn't get to taste of the food, he didn't get to try it, he lost out. And we have to be very careful not to underestimate God and to foolishly make the assumption that, well, God's not going to do it. But even worse than that, to make an assumption that God couldn't do it, even if he did some extreme miracle. Because God can do anything that he wants to do in our lives, and there will be times occasionally where we'll see miracles, not always, but we might see miracles, and those miracles are things that are going to be undeniable to us. But we want to be careful that we don't wind up like him, getting to see the miracle happening, but not getting to partake of it. So Elisha here gave a very lovely promise from God, and God kept his promise. The interesting parts to me, the most interesting, is that the Syrians had ran away thinking that there were chariots from all these kings of the Hittites and the Egyptians coming after them, thinking that Israel had somehow gotten out when they were besieged this whole time. And then the other is that these 4 lepers, they said, you know what, we're lepers, we're going to die anyway. If we go in the city, we'll just still die of the famine, or worse. And if we sit out here, we'll still die, whether it's the famine or our leprosy. So let's just go to the Syrians, and if they let us live, we'll be better off. But if they kill us, we'll just die just like we would have anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. And so, while it didn't take too much boldness and bravery to go forward like that, it did take some, and they had a very common sense solution to their problem, and it turned out God had an even better solution to the problem than what these men had originally had in mind. So, what do you think about the story of Elisha so far as we've been going through here? We've only got, as I'm seeing, one other passage to look through, and that's 2 Kings 13. We'll look at that next week. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fantastic day in the Lord. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend. God bless, and have a wonderful day in the Lord.